In today's business landscape, customers demand the highest standards. Companies that fail to meet those standards risk falling behind and losing business. Welcome to Nexus Consultancy. We have dedicated over 15 years in helping businesses to implement ISO management systems for improved quality, compliance, operational excellence, and customer satisfaction. Our company's purpose is simple, which is to empower business and people. Our team of experts work closely with our customers to access their needs and create customized solutions that meet their specific requirements. We conduct thorough audits and evaluations to identify areas for improvement and help our customers implement changes that drive success. Our consultants have extensive experience and serve over 2,000 customers, and we stay up to date with the latest industry trends and best practices. Whether you're a small business just starting out or a large corporation looking to improve your operations, Nexus Consultancy is here to help you optimize your operations, increase profits, and achieve your business goals.
Hello. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for coming on time and early. I'm so happy to see all of you here. I can see some familiar names. Say hi. Hi, Basita.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, welcome everyone. Okay, so let's get started. Let me share screen, my slide. Okay, wait. Okay, just a quick check if everyone can see the slide. Okay, all right. So anything, you just let me know in the chat. I will try to adjust to help you. Welcome again and good afternoon, everyone, to today's webinar, Food Defense and Food Fraud, Safeguarding the Food Supply Chain. First of all, I'm Danielle from Nexus Consultancy. So what we do in consultancy is we help business leaders and their team to grow their business through the implementation of ISO system, including food safety management system. So I believe majority of you are from the food industry today. So my passion has been in the food industry, helping companies establish food safety management system and achieve their food safety goal. So throughout today 1 hour webinar, if you have any questions, feel free to type the questions in the chat and I will attend to it from time to time and try my best to them. We'll also have a quick Q&A session at the end. So do type your questions in the chat. I will try to answer them later. All right, so food defense and food fraud have been very popular, yet mysterious topics, I would say, in the food safety management system. So popular because it is a mandatory requirement, especially if you're doing GFSI recognized scheme, such as BRC system, FSSA 22000, IFSS, and also SQF. Mysterious is because there's no one standardized guideline on how you can establish the system. So I would imagine if there's only one guideline, that would be very easy, right? We just follow the guideline. But the truth is there are many different types of guideline on this topic. So today, I hope I can give you some ideas on how to set up your food defense and food fraud system. And these are the topics that we're going to cover today. So we're going to go through the introduction and also some introduction about the standards. So what are the standards that require you to set up this system? And then the most important part would be the product defense system. Okay, how to set up. So I will introduce what kind of food defense, food fraud risk assessment that you can do to actually set up your product defense system. Okay, so let's take a look on the introduction. So first of all, the spelling. So if you have noticed, we can actually write defense in two different way. So either with a C or with a S. So it depends whether you're from UK or from US. No, I'm from Malaysia. Yeah, so in Malaysia, I think both are fine. So for today's training, I'm going to use as defense, all right? And if your procedure already written in defense using C, that is fine as well. Okay, so first of all, what is the definition of food defense? So when we see the word defense, so we immediately know that, okay, is to defend something, right? To defend something and to protect something from attack that could actually cause harm and danger. So when we put the food in front of defense, what does it mean? Food defense is the process of defending the food product, okay, from being attacked. So the FDA defined the food defense as the effort to protect food from acts of intentional adulteration. So the key word here is intentional. Okay, so later I'm going to explain more about this word. So another definition given by PAS 96, which is a guidance document for food defense. It says food defense is a procedure to assure the security of food and drink. So again, is to protect the food and drink, to secure them, as well as the supply chain from what? From malicious and ideological motivated attack. So again, they use the word attack and also malicious attack. Malicious attack means intentional harm, leading to contamination of the all supply disruption. Okay, so GFSI also provide definition for food defense. So it says it is a process to ensure, same thing, the security of food and drink from all forms of intentional malicious attack. So again, they use the word intentional attack, which is meaning intentional, meaning purposely done, including ideologically motivated. So I mentioned about motivation behind the attack, leading to contamination. And whereas food fraud definition given by GFSI is the intentional substitution, addition, tampering, or misrepresentation of food or feed ingredient, or food feed packaging. So here they also include feed, all right, and packaging as well. Labeling, product information, or false or misleading statements made about a product for economic gain that could impact the consumer health. So GFSI actually give much clearer definition about food fraud, which they have stated almost all category under food fraud, like substitution, addition, misrepresentation, but they also talk about the motivation behind is for economic gain, and that could impact the consumer health. Okay, so what does it mean when after we see all this definition? So all this definition, they highlight three key points, okay? So first point is the purpose of product defense is to protect the food. So it's not to protect, you know, from work safety, is actually to protect food safety as well, okay? And when we talk about protection to the food, it's actually to protection not only the food, but the entire supply chain, the business, your reputation as well. Okay, so the second key point is we want to protect it from intentional adulteration. So the keyword here is intentional. Okay, the keyword here is intentional, and then due to malicious and ideological motivated attack. So there are motivations behind this intentional adulteration or attack. Okay, so later we'll go about it. So these are the three key points highlighted by all these definitions. So what does it mean is food defense, it is a system that we need to set up, but sometimes we do see these two different words, yeah? So should it be food defense or should it be product defense? Which one is more accurate? Okay, what do you think? Okay, you can let me know your opinion or your idea in the chat room. There's no right or wrong. We just want to have some discussions today. Okay, if you like to share your opinion, you can write down in the chat, yeah? So according to this, there's a lot of centers actually use food defense, And later I will show you those requirements stated in different food safety standard. So for this webinar, I have actually combined food defense and food fraud together and present to you as a new concept as product defense, because the food, when we mention about food, sometimes we forgot about things that are associated with the food itself. For example, the packaging. So in fact, to protect the food, we must also protect the packaging that it goes into and goes into the process. Okay, hence it is product defense. So when we mention product defense, which means the defense system will also cover the food packaging. Okay, which means when you do risk assessment, you need to consider the attack on packaging, the fraud on packaging as well. So it's not only on raw material, but also to cover packaging. So if later I use a lot of product defense, don't get confused. It literally still means food defense, but it covers everything, including the packaging. Okay, so product defense is a term used to categorize the following three types of malicious threats. So malicious means that we do some attack, the actions to cause harm. Okay, so the very famous one are these three, which is fraud, okay, sabotage, and also terrorism. So if your company are certified to FSSC or BRC, and you must have already done the threat assessment and also the vulnerability assessment, right? So fraud is usually covered in your vulnerability assessment. So we call it the food fraud vulnerability assessment. Sabotage and terrorism, usually you cover it under the food defense threat assessment. Okay, so when we see it as a whole, we call it the product defense system. It's basically to protect your product from this fraud, from sabotage, and also from terrorism. All right, so let's take a look. What is fraud? Okay, so the term fraud is used to describe deliberate adulteration or misinterpretation of a product for financial gain. Okay, so the keyword here is intentional, deliberate, and it's either done through the way adulteration or misrepresentation. So adulteration, it could include substitution, dilution, additions, and the motivation behind is for financial gain. Okay, so in this instance, when we say product, okay, it can mean your raw material, ingredient, your packaging material as well, or even your finished product. Okay, so adulteration is putting something into the product and with the ingredient or with substances is not supposed to be there. So why people want to do that? Okay, for example, they want to substitute certain ingredient in the product with a cheaper ingredient, then they can reduce the product cost, and the motivation behind is financial gain. So this is one type of the fraud. Okay, so example, replace honey with sugar syrup. Okay, and then misrepresentation means that the product is advertised for not what it is supposed to be. So for example, you say that the product is organic, but then it is not really organic, or maybe it's not organic. So that is the meaning of misrepresentation. So people do that because of financial gain. So that is the definition of fraud. Okay, so to look into the definition of fraud, it contains some very important terms that we usually use them, especially if you are in charge of the food fraud vulnerability assessment, then you probably will notice or recognize this word. So the fraud is basically the fraudulent and intentional substitution, dilution, or addition to a product or raw material, or it could be a misrepresentation of the product or material for the purpose of financial gain. Okay, so how do they do it is either they reduce the cost or they increase the product perceived value. So by increasing the apparent value of the product or reducing the cost of its production. So example, if you claim it is honey, but actually the content is not honey, it's sugar syrup, which is much cheaper than honey itself, but you sell it at a honey price, so hence you gain financially. Okay, so that's all. And if you have any questions about any of this term, do let me know and type in the chat, yeah? Okay, so the motivation, remember, behind fraud, it will financial gain. So which is achieved through two ways. Number one, reduce the cost of production. And number two, increase the selling price. Okay, and next go to the next term, sabotage. So the term sabotage is used to describe deliberate destruction. So again, is intentional. We want to disrupt something, damage or destruction of products of the process. So the purpose they want to do that is to harm the business reputation. And what is the motivation behind? Due to personal grievance. So like, I'm not satisfied with you, or I'm not happy with what I get from you. That's why I have this grudge. I want to revenge. Yeah, so that is the motivation behind. We call it the sabotage. So it's quite different from fraud, the motivation. So we must be able to differentiate that, especially when you do the risk assessment. So for example, a disgruntled employee putting pins into, food product, which cause the manufacturer, they have to recall the product. And the negative, imagine the negative impact it will cause to your business. All right. So the harm is real. So this is sabotage. What about terrorism? So terrorism is basically the threat is designed to cause a wide-scale harm and terror. It is also a form of sabotage, just that it is done in much bigger scale. So the purpose is to cause bigger harm and terror at wide scale. So for example, the main water supply was poisoned. Yeah, because when the water supply is poisoned, it's not only affecting your company alone, but it will affect many businesses, probably in the state or even in the country. So that is the difference between terrorism and sabotage. So maybe the action of attack is the same, but this one is in much larger scale. So I think thankfully, we haven't heard any reported case of food-related terrorism yet in Malaysia. But sabotage, yes, it has been in the news, in overseas, example, needles found in Australian strawberry in the year of 2018. Okay, so I saw some empty, you pose a question. So is sabotage an internal issue or it can be external as well? Yes, it can be both. It can be done by internal people. It is also can be done by external people, such as your supplier, your contractor, or your competitors. All right, so we'll cover that later. Thank you for asking that, MT. So what are the motivation behind sabotage and terrorism? So it is no longer about they don't want money, but they want revenge. Okay, so a person that carry out the sabotage and terrorism, they have different motivation. Okay, they want to cause you, your reputation. They want to damage your business because they have a personal grievance. Okay, so they want revenge. So this is much more scarier when we think about it, because we can no longer know a person, okay, or a group of person that they have such, ideological belief system that they want to, sabotage you. But fraud, we can understand because it's all related to money, and there are many cases in the market where you just do some Google and research, then you can do some prevention, precautions actions, do some testing. So I would say compared to sabotage and terrorism, fraud is much easier to actually handle, although sometimes testing could be expensive, but sabotage, sometimes you can't see it coming. Okay, so I would say that is the difference. Okay, so the motivation behind definitely is not money, is personal grievance. Okay, so when we set up the product defense, it is about protection to our raw material as well as the packaging material that we use to manufacture our product. And we also must protect our product from all the processes involved, from the point you receive the raw material until you process the goods and deliver the goods to customer. So we want to protect from intentional contamination due to fraud, sabotage, and also terrorism. So that is the concept that I want to introduce to you today. Product defense is the whole concept, protecting your material and product for the entire processes involved in the operation, from receiving to production to delivery. Protect them from intentional contamination due to fraud, sabotage, and terrorism. So it's the entire thing, okay? It's not only fraud, it's not only sabotage, but three of them all together. Okay, so which means we need to set up a product defense system, okay? So when you do your threat and vulnerability assessment, then which I believe you already done that, and then you came up with some, mitigation action plan, things that you need to monitor. We call it a system, or you can call it a plan, all right? So like some standard, they call it food defense plan or food fraud mitigation plan. All right, so over here, I combine them to the plan is within your product defense system. So the system wording is much bigger. It's just like your food safety management system. Because why? I would like you to see it from the system perspective. When we see it from the system perspective, then there are much more elements involved in product defense rather than just focusing on risk assessment itself. Okay, so product defense system, I would say it consists of these 5 elements. The first one is you need to have a product defense team, all right? And then the second, you need to do your threat and vulnerability assessment, which I believe you already done that. And then number 3, from the result of assessment, you came up with protection measures to prevent or protect from fraud, sabotage, and terrorism. Then definitely we need to do some monitoring activity based on the protection measures already established. And don't forget the review, all right? So this forms the entire product defense system itself. Okay, all right. So just to make it clear, product defense system, you already know the purpose is to protect food from intentional contamination. So on your right-hand side, intentional contamination due to fraud, sabotage, and terrorism. So I would like to make very clear differences here. Whereas the hazard plan, which you are very familiar with from hazard analysis, it is to protect unintentional contamination, which can be from your material, from processes, and from the environment itself. Okay, so the difference here is the common hazard analysis that we do, that is for accidental contamination, unintentional, not purposely done one. For example, if I'm, doing work at the production and my hair is not properly covered and it dropped into the product, that is accidental. Okay, so in product defense system, what we want to focus is only on intentional. So it may sound very easy, but the reality is when we really delve into the risk assessment, sometimes we got carried away. When we do the threat and vulnerability assessment, sometimes we forgot, we just write down, okay, cross-contamination from machine. So then we will ask the question, is this cross-contamination that you put inside the threat assessment is actually should appear in your hazard analysis, but not here? So we want to differentiate that. And why we want to differentiate that so clearly is because we want to really focus on sabotaging, on fraud, and also on terrorism so that you won't miss out any potential risks that caused by these 3 actions. Okay. All right. So to have a conclusion, is the aim of the product defense system, I would say 2 big goals when we set up the product defense system. The first one is to basically to minimize the impact to your consumer, okay, your customer, and also your business. Because when sabotaging happen, the product, if you are not able to detect it, it will reach your consumer and your customer as well. And when it happens, it will definitely impact your business, whether you're going to have complaint, recall, or even face legal action. Okay, so the main driver for implementation of this product defense system is we want to protect your consumer, customer, and business. So the second aim of the product defense system is also to protect the supply chain. So it's not only yourself, your business, but also the entire supply chain. So when we talk about supply chain here, it means what? It means all the business that is involved in the processing and delivery products from farm to fork. So it means your supplier and your supplier, they are definitely in the supply chain. And then it could mean your outsourced supplier. It could mean your customers and customers as well. So we try to protect the entire supply chain. So I believe in near future, this requirement on food defense and food fraud will become more and more popular. In fact, some of the country has already set it as a legal requirement when you want to export your product into their country, for example, US, okay? There are certain requirements that you need to comply in terms of food defense, okay? After 911 incident. So, although it's not 100% yet, I mean, the whole world, but then many of this country, they has already started or already put in effort in terms of food defense and food fraud. So I will only see this is going to be grow much bigger. So if you haven't set up the system yet in your company, maybe this is a good time to start actually. Okay, so later I will explain why it is not like everyone get into this product defense system yet, because not all food safety management system require that. Okay, all right. So just to show you a quick two example of the cases. So I think everybody know about this case, melamine in milk in year 2008. So from China, milk powder from China. So I just want to show you the impact. It has caught over 50,000 children hospitalized, and some of them actually died. So, which means it can be very, very serious. So melamine in milk is actually adulteration, okay? It's a food fraud. So they adulterate the milk with melamine to actually try to increase the N in the milk so that it seems like it is high protein in milk. Hence, the quality of milk is better, but essentially it's not. Okay, so it has happened long time ago. All right, 2008. And even before that, there are many cases. If you Google, you will find it's actually started in the 18th century food fraud. Okay. And another example that I want to show you here is sabotage case. So if you Google, food fraud cases in the world are much, more compared to sabotage cases, but it do happen. So in 2018, Australian strawberry is contaminated with needles. So apparently it's a sabotage by a disgruntled employee and it has affected the entire supply chain, because this manufacturer, they supplied their strawberries to all the retail chain. Yeah? So imagine that whole week, they don't have strawberry. Okay. And some of them, they need to recall. So it is real. All right. Okay, so that's the introduction part, and I would like to do some quiz question with you just to, let you stay awake. So you can type your answers in the chat. All right. So what is fraud? Okay, is it A, deterioration or degradation of product by accident, or is it B, adulteration or misrepresentation for financial gain, or C, manipulation or separation for personal possession? Okay, many answer B. Yes, thank you very much. You are all very smart, yeah, very good student. Means you are listening to me, yeah. Okay, all right. So the correct answer is B. That's right. Okay, next one. What about sabotage? What is sabotage? Is it A, inciting fear or panic, or B, damage or disruption due to personal grievance, or C, replacement or substitution to reduce cost? Okay, so many of you has answered B. Let's review the answer. Yes, it is B. Thank you very much. Okay, one more. What is terrorism? So is it A, an action which is intended to cause wide-scale harm? Or B, to act against the business to damage the reputation. This is a bit tricky. And C, actions that are carried out to make more money. So let's see what's the answer. Okay, so Fatin, Pasita mentioned A. Okay, many of you mentioned A as well. Okay, one more A. So everybody mentioned A. That's right. Okay, you're also smart, yeah? Yes, that's right. That is the definition for terrorism, action intended to cause wide-scale harm. Okay, and still have this one. Okay, so what does the product defense system manage? Is it only vulnerability, or is it B, threat and vulnerability, or C, only threat? This is the last quiz question. So you answer B, Jiawei, you answer B, Fatin, B. Okay, yes, thank you very much. It is B. So I introduce you to product defense system as the whole concept that we want to look into the three threat and vulnerability due to fraud, sabotage, and terrorism. So we will combine both threat and vulnerability. Okay, all right. Okay, so thank you very much for your participation in section 1 just now. So let's move on to section 2, the standard. But before that, do you have any questions? If you have, you can type them in the chat box, yeah? Okay, so let's introduce to you the standards that define the requirements for both food fraud and food defense, yeah? So on your screen, you can see 4 standards. So on your left, this one is the FSSC 22000. So this year, they have just published version 6, the newest version. So if you haven't done the upgrading yet, you will need to start because next year, April onwards, all audit on FSSC 22000 will be based on the new version 6. Okay, so that is FSSC 22000. They have requirement on both food defense and food fraud. And then the second book is BRC, Global Standard for Food Safety. So this one, they also have a requirement on food defense and food fraud. The next two is IFS and also SQF. So all these 4 standards are the GFSI recognized standards. So if you haven't know what is GFSI, it stands for Global Food Safety Initiative. All right. So all these 4 standards, they follow the GFSI requirement in terms of food defense and food fraud, which means if your company are certified to any of these standards, you are already compliant with the food defense and food fraud requirement defined in the standard. So I know that some of you here, your company are currently not certified to GFSI yet, but probably you are certified to HACCP or maybe ISO 22000. Okay, can I see some response here? If you are certified to ISO 22000 but not yet like FSSC or BRC, can you type ISO in the chat so I would know if we have somebody from non-GFSI certified company? Okay, thank you, Shani. Thank you, Fu. Okay, because I do recognize some of our existing customer or past customer from the registration list, and I know that you're certified to ISO 22000, but not FSSC. So if you are certified to either HACCP, Malaysia Standard, or Codex, or ISO 22000, then the food defense is included in ISO 22000 standard, but not the food fraud, which means you do not have the food fraud requirement to comply yet. Maybe you have some assessment done. It could be due to your customer audit, but in the ISO 22000 standard, there's no requirement on food fraud. Okay, they are only requirements for food defense, and the requirements are very simple. They just ask you to control access and have some actions to protect yourself from sabotaging and also terrorism act. Okay, so that is the difference between the GFSI and non-GFSI scheme. So although you're not required to do that, but this webinar, I hope that it can help you to create some awareness on food fraud as well. Then you can get ready, because even though you don't do the assessment, it's not a requirement in ISO or HACCP, but food fraud do happen. Yeah, it could happen to your, the supply chain of the product that you're dealing with as well. Okay. All right, so let's take a look on the requirements from the GFSI standard, recognized standard. So these are the clauses about the food defense and food fraud. So if you look at the BRC standard for food safety, latest version issue 9, they have mentioned the requirements under this clause. So they have asked you to do authorized access, and then they need you to do a food defense system. And 5.4 is about product authenticity claims and change of custody. So this one is basically fraud. Okay, so food defense and food fraud. So same as BRC packaging issue 6, they have both product authenticity, change of custody. This is fraud. And then 4.4 is site security and product defense. And BRC, they have a lot of version. Yeah, they have agent and broker storage. They have all mentioned this as well. Okay, so for FSSA Food Safety version 6, I believe majority of you here, your company are certified your FSSC. And in version 6, it is still the same clause, 253 food defense and also 254 food fraud mitigation. So these two are still there. So for IFS food, food fraud, food defense plan, and then SQF, they also have these two topics. And the last one that I show here is actually the technical spec, the GMP requirement that you use for ISO 22000 and also FSSC. I just want to show you the topic is under 18 and they only talk about food defense, but not food fraud, yeah? Okay, so that is on the standard. So if you have questions about the standard itself, feel free to ask me in the chat box. All right, so let's move to the last and most important sections, which is the product defense system. Okay, so how do we set up a product defense system? So first of all, I have actually restructured them into these 4 categories. So you need a team, right? So the team, you need to define the roles and responsibility. So which means you need to set up a team who is specialized and will be accountable and responsible for your product defense system, which is for both food defense and also food fraud. Okay, and this team member, they are required to attend training. Okay, they need to understand what is fraud, what is sabotage, terrorism, and the impact it causes to your business, to your consumer, and also the customer. They also need to learn about the technique on how to do the assessment, how to come up with protection measures, and basically the entire product defense system. So that is a training requirement. Training also means that training for your employee or other employee, general awareness on product defense. Okay, so the third element in the system is you need to have procedure. So you need to set up your procedure, your threat assessment procedure, your vulnerability assessment procedure. So you need to have a defined methodology to do that. Okay, so I'm going to zoom into each one of these elements. So first of all, for your roles and responsibility, so you can call them whatever name that you want. So over here, I call them product defense team because I have already combined both food defense and food fraud. So in your case, you may have 2 different teams, which is fine. You may have your food defense team, you may have your food fraud team, which is fine. Okay, or you can join them together. Right, so in this team, usually you will need to have a team leader and consists of team members. So some may ask me, okay, who need to be in the team, right? So I've shown you in on the screen. So these are the suggested people that can be in the team. Procurement, sorry, I just noticed got typo error. Okay, so someone from procurement because they purchase the material, and then R&D because they design the product, production, QA/QC, warehouse and logistics. So basically, the member from the operation function will need to be in the team. Okay, we also need HR. Why? Anyone from HR here? I think Basita, you're from HR, right?
Yes, correct.
So why HR? Why I suggest HR in the product defense team? What do you think?
Why?
Due to training? Yes. One of it is due to training, but actually HR
Documentation.
is much more than that. So remember we talk about sabotage, it can be internal or external, right? So internal means we refer to internal employee. So when the internal employee, they are dissatisfied, they, tak syok. So who will know? HR will need to know, right? HR will need to know. So HR will need to keep an eye. to actually, sometimes your company, you do have to, employee happiness index, right? You will do a happiness index survey. Yeah, that is one way to get to know whether there's any dissatisfaction happening around, okay, among the employee. And HR will also coordinate with head of department to, sometimes you talk to the HOD and then try to gain some information about, any team member, recently we just changed our structure, or recently we just reduced our bonus and things like that. Anyone actually mentioned to you they are not happy and things like that. So you try to, keep an eye everywhere, because we want to, prevent from sabotage. So that is the HR, why HR need to be in the team. Okay, so it's not only for training and security, of course, and also IT. So anyone know why IT need to be in the team? Yes, Junli, thank you. Also during recruitment, screening. Yeah, so why IT in the team? So attack can happen through your software, through the system that you use, SAP, ERP, or they hack into your system and then alter the formulation, example. Okay, so that is actually related to IT as well. Okay, so Nojana asks, is food defense system team same with the food safety team? Okay, I would say here, it is not the same, although I know that many companies actually set it as the same team because it's the same member, which is fine. Okay. Why I say it's not the same is because the knowledge that need to be possessed by this two team are a little bit different. So of course, all the team members, they need to know about the knowledge about food safety management system. But particularly for product defense team, they will need to know about risk assessment technique for doing to conduct the threat and vulnerability assessment. They also need to know about the knowledge about the supply chain. So for example, you have procurement and R&D, probably they know well about the supply chain, what is the material that you always get from which country, which supplier. Hence, they can contribute in terms of fraud information. Okay, so it could be a little bit different. However, if you currently are having the same team for both food safety team and defense, it doesn't mean you're compliant, still okay. All right, so set up your team. So the team, they need to go for training. Okay, so I have listed here what are the training, what type of training that your product defense team need to attend. So they need to know the knowledge of your business supply chain. Okay, so you can have some internal training to brief all the team member about this is where it starts in your supply chain and this is where it ends. So meaning who are your supplier, they need to know. Supplier also they need to know. If you have any outsourced party, they also need to know. And then who is your customer and customer's customer. So basically you need to know the flow of the material to your product and material used by the business, the method that you use for threat and vulnerability assessment, and also the principles of product defense. Okay, so these are the training topic that usually we'll cover in the typical product defense and food fraud training. Okay, so the next element that you need to set up in the food product defense system is you must have the procedure. So I figured you already have the food defense procedure and also food fraud procedure. So you need to have a procedure. So in the procedure, you need to define who is a team member, and then what is the methodology you use to do the risk assessment, how frequent you need to review the plan. So that is a procedure, usually we put why you need to do that, the objective, and also the 5W, okay? So next is the methodology, which is the most important part. So the methodology of a product defense system, I will further divide into 5 steps. So I hope this doesn't confuse you, yeah? So 5 steps to do your risk assessment. So how do we do that? First step, before you jump into, okay, there's a template of assessment, let's fill out the template, right? Actually, there are some basic information that you need to gather first. It's just like your hazard analysis. Before you can do a hazard analysis, what do you do? What do you need to actually gather first? The information. before you can do a hazard analysis, what document you need to prepare first? Anyone? Anyone can help me answer that in the chat before a hazard analysis? Usually you need to draw a process flow chart, right? Process flow chart lays down all your material. So same here. The first step, define the scope of assessment is basically you need to gather some preliminary information first. So later I will brief you that. And then step two, then only you use the information to conduct your assessment, the threat and vulnerability assessment. Step three is to determine the protection measures. So from the result of your assessment, then we think of mitigation action. Okay. And then from there, then you start your monitoring activity. And then 5, don't forget to review. Okay. So this one will help you to actually set up your entire product defense system. So step 1, scope of assessment. Okay. So here I introduce to you what kind of the scope that you need to cover for your entire threat and vulnerability assessment. Okay. So I divide into 3. First one is upstream, okay? And then second one is internal, downstream. So what is upstream? So imagine there is a river coming from the mountain and then it flow downwards to the ground, right? So the upstream is where the river starts, and then the downstream is where the rivers end. And then the entire thing in the middle is called internal, okay? So I use that. So upstream means what? Is the business before your business, which are your suppliers and your supplier's supplier. So you need to know who is a supplier because you need to do a material fraud risk assessment, right? So material coming from who? From a supplier. But sometimes your supplier is a trading agent. They are not the manufacturer. So do you need to know who are the original manufacturer? The answer is yes. If you want to have a comprehensive fraud assessment, you need to know who is the original manufacturer, hence your supplier. Okay, and internal are referring to internal process where your business activity start, which is your receiving of material, and then you have storage, production, and then delivery. So that is your internal process. So your assessment, threat and vulnerability assessment, need to cover the entire process. And then number 3 is your downstream. So downstream are referring to all the businesses after your business, which is your customer and also your customer. So imagine you're selling to a distributor, which is your customer, and distributor will distribute to their customer, which is the retailer. So which include them also, and also your final consumer. Okay, so that is downstream. So, which means the scope of your threat and vulnerability assessment will need to cover these 3, upstream, internal, and downstream. So let's take a look. We use the word threat and vulnerability. What is the definition? So threat means is a deliberate act to cause harm or loss, which is intentional harm. Okay, this is what we call threat. Vulnerability is weakness. Okay, vulnerability is how exposed your business is to threat having an impact. So how vulnerable means that how weak is your security of the site. Okay, how weak. So we want to consider both the threat, what type of action that people can do to harm you, that is threat, and how weak is our defense system, vulnerability. Okay, so that is the 2 different definitions. So when we do assessment, we need to consider this both threat and vulnerability for all the scope, okay, within the supply chain. So step number 2 is now you can do the assessment, okay, which means we need to cover the assessment for upstream, for internal, and for downstream. So imagine you have 3 types of assessment, 1 for upstream, 1 for internal, and 1 for downstream. So upstream is you need to gather information of all raw and packaging material from all suppliers. And remember, you need to know if your supplier is a trading company, you need to know who is the original manufacturer. Okay, and then number 2, we also need to do assessment on your internal process. So how do we get information on your internal process? You need to draw your process flow chart. So you can use the same process flow chart that you have from hazard analysis. You also have plant layout because during the assessment, you need to know your area. Who can access that area, who is authorized to access, whether the area is secure or not. So that's why you need to refer to your plant layout. Okay, and then number 3, downstream, you need to gather information of all your outsourced process. For example, when you deliver your product to your customer, you may hire a transport company, okay, a transportation company to actually deliver your product to customer. So the transport company is under downstream, or maybe you outsource packing process. So the packer is also under the downstream process. Okay, so consider that in your threat and vulnerability assessment as well. Okay, so how to do threat and vulnerability assessment for upstream? So you need to consider the fraud cases. Upstream usually we link to fraud because we are talking about raw and packaging material, right? So you need to consider the risk of substitution, dilution, addition, or misrepresentation. And where can you get this information from? Google. Okay, so the team will need to Google. Okay, let's say you buy tomato sauce, okay, as one of your ingredient. You need to Google tomato sauce fraud cases happening around the world, not only in Malaysia, but other part of the world as well. So from there, you gather the information to help you to list down what kind of potential fraud cases that could happen. Okay, list it down. All right. And besides Googling, you can also subscribe to some, industry magazine, food safety magazine. They do publish information about fraud from time to time. Okay, so the team member can actually gather some information from there as well. Okay, and don't forget to consider your claim. The claim. So the claim here are referring to what? Let's say you buy a material, they claim that is organic because your product need to be organic. You also have that claim on your finished product. Then when you do your fraud analysis, you need to consider claim as well. If they claim it's organic, but then when they sell you it's not organic, or they campur dengan not organic, then it's considered a fraud. Okay, so I know that some company, they haven't considered claim in their fraud. So if that happened to you, you can add in claim as one of your fraud incident as well. Okay, so fraud can actually happen during your internal process and also your downstream, how people steal your product. So imagine an employee steal your product and then sell in a gray market. It will harm your reputation as well if anything happen, right? Yeah, so consider theft as well. Okay, so for internal, we need to do threat and vulnerability assessment as well. But for internal, what we'll be focusing is on sabotage and terrorism. Okay, fraud, of course, you consider as well that is theft. So for sabotaging is malicious contamination, like purposely put something inside your water tank or purposely, put needle into your mixing tank. So that is malicious contamination. Don't forget data tampering. So if let's say you have a test report, okay, the result is actually out, the microbe is actually out, but then the employee, they actually alter the test result to be okay, and then that's why hence you release the product, boom, there will be issue, there will be complaint or recall cases. So data tampering, when it is done purposely, is considered an attack. Okay, so you can actually add in this one, consider this one, any point in your operations that people can actually alter the data, okay, without you knowing. And then of course, unauthorized access, like the store, the warehouse supposed to be locked, so it's only authorized to storekeeper. But sometimes you do have unauthorized access because it's not locked all the time. Okay, so that is also another risk. So when you do that, you consider who can have access to that area. And even they have access, do they have opportunity to do it or not? Let's say when they enter the warehouse, everything is well wrapped and is inside the cage. So the opportunity to do the attack is actually lesser. But if you enter your warehouse and you see all the product is not wrapped, and then it's actually some carton boxes is here and there, some loose carton, the opportunity to attack is actually higher. And when they attack, also consider, can you see them attack or not? Perpetrator detection, perpetrator meaning the people who do the sabotage. Can you see them? So you say, yeah, I got CCTV, so I can actually see them. So that is perpetrator detection. So imagine if you don't have CCTV, then the risk is higher. Track detection. So after they have, conducted the sabotage, they contaminate the product purposely, can you detect or not. So if it's happened in production, let's say they put needle and you have metal detector afterwards, then you say, yeah, I can detect because everything go through metal detector. But if it's happened in warehouse, then you won't be able to detect it. Okay, so if you're not able to detect the threat after they have done it, then the risk is actually higher. So consider all this. Okay, so same goes with downstream threat and vulnerability assessment. Also, we focusing on sabotage. Okay, fraud would be on theft. Sabotage and terrorism is quite similar to the internal process as well. So downstream means that you need to assess whether your outsourced supplier, outsourced processes has any risk of sabotaging or not, because you are handling your product to them to deliver to customer. Or maybe you outsource a packing process, you pass your product for them to pack. So do you know what's exactly happening in their factory or not? So you need to do an assessment on that as well. Okay, so today I actually show you a template that we use for both threat and also food fraud vulnerability assessment. So this is an example of upstream, okay? And this is an example of assessment. So why I say it's an example, because you can actually use any template. Because risk assessment is a common template. So as long as it makes sense and you have considered all the factors that we've gone through just now, then you're fine. Okay, so you're not compulsory to follow this. All right. So in our training, we'll use this to train you. Okay. All right. So next one, after you have done the risk assessment, then it's time to determine your protection measure. So protection measure is what you call the mitigation action. So over here, I introduced to you 4 types of protection measure. So you may say that, oh, so many types. I only have one type, or I just call it mitigation action. Can or not? Can. Okay, it doesn't matter. But in this way, I just help you to see clearly. Okay, because when we do protection measures, sometimes it can be, you need to put effort in your GMP. So it can be, you already have this control in your GMP program. For example, you manage your supplier and contractor, you go and audit them. All right. Or you already go, every day you do a site security inspection, your guard, example. You also send material for testing. So it's already in your GMP program. Okay. And CCP, you already have your CCP. For example, I already have metal detector. So that helps in my products defense system as well. Okay, then now what is VTP? VTP stands for vulnerable threat point. So vulnerable threat point is something like CCP, meaning it's a critical weak point. So when you do a product's defense risk assessment and you find out there's one point that is very weak that I need to, control it like a CCP, you can call them VTP. So it doesn't matter. You can also call them CCP. It's just a term, okay? So example that I give you here is tamper-proof packaging seal. Maybe before you do the assessment, you don't implement that, but after your assessment, you decided to implement it, okay? And then you need every batch to be checked. It's just like how you check a CCP, okay? And what is risk register? Risk register is basically something that you don't have budget to do now. You put in budget for next year, your improvement plan. So you call it you just register them first, so that auditor will know that you are doing something about it, although the action is not done yet. Okay, so you register them first. Next year only you implement. Okay, all right. So that is the example of 4 types of protection measure. So after that, then of course you need to kickstart your monitoring activity. So based on the protection measure just now, each of them will have your monitoring activity. Like example, metal detection, every hourly you need to check. Or supplier audit, every year you need to go and audit them. So you will have frequency for, the monitoring activity. So just do your PDCA, okay? So plan your monitoring activity, implement them, someone verify, and then take action if there's an improvement needs. And finally, you need to review, okay? Don't forget to review. So review is to prove that the defense system is still effective and valid, okay? So over here, I introduce you 3 types of review. To avoid confusions, of course, you can just call them review, okay? So what I meant by reactive review is you need to react on what is happening in the market. So for example, in the market, you receive a news from government alert or update saying that the food has been purposely adulterated with what and what, yeah, then you become alert because you also use this material, and then you start to actually review your supplier, review their spec and things like that. So that is reactive review when something happened. Proactive review is before it happened. So before it happened, you need to do maybe your 6-monthly review or yearly review. Okay, so for example, your supplier told you that they changed principle, hence the manufacturer change. Okay, so before they done that, you need to do your review first. Okay, who is this new manufacturer? What is their reputation like? Do they have any food safety management system? You start to do your proactive review first. And then the last review is you just do your normal yearly review for your management review meeting, or you can do your annual testing. Okay, just test your product defense system. All right, so with these 5 steps, I believe you are able to set up your complete and comprehensive product defense system. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, you can type your question in the chat, yeah? Okay, so thank you for staying up to this hour. So it's almost towards the end already, and as a token of appreciation, I would like to offer you this free product defense self-audit checklist. Okay, so you can scan the QR code, okay, on the screen. If you're not able to scan, I'm going to paste the link. Yeah, paste the link in the chat box. You can click the link as well. Okay, so this questionnaire will have a series of questions about your food defense and also food fraud, and which is established based on FSSC and BRC requirements. All right, so it is actually help you to check what is your gap basically. So who can do this? If you already have the system in place, you can do that just to double check, is there anything else that you can do to further improve any gaps that you don't know yet. For company that haven't set up the system, you also can do it so that you know where to start. Okay, so at the end of the assessment, you'll be able to know your total score and what does it mean by the score, and then hence you know what to do. And you will also receive a free audit report via the email that you put in when you fill out the form. Okay, so feel free to actually do this. And after you fill out the form, if you have any question, you can PM me or you can WhatsApp me, like you need my help to interpret or whatever. I am more than happy to do so for you. Okay, so please scan this and do it. Okay, and next would be the Q&A session. Yeah, so any questions that you have? So some of the questions that you asked just now, I believe I have answered them during the process. Any more questions that you have? No, no question? All good? Okay. If all good, then thank you so much for attending. I have an announcement to make. For those who know us, we do webinar every month. Okay, so this is our next month webinar on ESG topic, how to establish environmental health and safety measure system to start your ESG journey. So the speaker will be our CEO, Darren, and you're welcome to register. You can also share this with your friend. Okay, so thank you so much for attending, everyone, and have a good day.